Welcome to the EMEA Recruitment Podcast in partnership with international medical charity Operation Smile. To help us reach our goal of creating 100 new smiles, please visit emearecruitment.eu/operation-smile. In this episode, we speak to Christian Wurzinger, the Group CFO at Klosterfrau Group in Switzerland. Throughout his career in finance, Christian explains how he has found recognizing the importance of people essential in driving results.
So hello everybody, welcome to the next episode of the EMEA Recruitment Podcast in partnership with our good friends over at Operation Smile. As my colleague Rose mentioned, I'm delighted to welcome Christian onto the podcast today. So Christian, hopefully you can hear me okay and all is well?
Fantastic. Great to be here. Great to hear your voice. Yes, I'm here and everything is good.
Excellent. Now, I know we've got a list of questions to go through that have been put to me through my network for you today. But before we start going into these questions, it's almost impossible to have a podcast interview at this time of our lives without mentioning the dreaded COVID word. I think what I've found over the last 15 months when I've been speaking to guests on the podcast is that they've usually taken something from the last 15 months. They've learned something from it and, try to taken a positive out of it if possible. So I thought it'd be a good question to ask you at the start, really, in terms of what positives you personally have taken from the last year and a half, either from a personal or from business perspective, really.
It's actually a great question because usually people just complain. And I think there are really two things for me that stand out. One is the ability to work remotely. It's astonishing how effective even large organizations can be. We ran an entire highly complex SAP introduction remotely. It was the period where we wanted to start testing with a lot of people involved. We had set up rooms in our headquarters where we were planning to have 30 people on site for weeks, working shoulder to shoulder, signing off documents and things like that. And that's exactly when the lockdown happened. Mm-hmm. And so we said, well, let's go remote. So first we had 3 sites involved, 2 factories and the headquarters. We said, okay, let's decentralize and go to 3 locations. This was week 1. And then week 2, we said, well, everybody goes home. And because we operate in a highly regulated pharma environment, there is a lot of formal approvals and checks on which processes you put into the system, how you reflect them, etc. is necessary. So we had to digitize all of that on the fly. And it worked incredibly well. Incredibly. So this is just the most extreme example, but the entire operation has continued to function extremely well. And so we really want to take that piece into the future, also to be a very attractive employer and give a maximum flexibility possible to employees, how they want to work. But that leads me to the second point, which is a more social, psychological one, which is you really were forced to look at the value of relationships and the quality of relationships. Because everybody was under a lot of stress, uncertainty, pressure on the business, and just really genuine crisis all around. And in order to keep the health of the organization and individuals, it was even more important to look at relationships that I have directly with people, or how people within the organization have relationships or can create them, especially if somebody new comes in. So that extra focus on the interpersonal is the second positive. And this is also something we want to preserve. It's sort of as interesting sort of two sides of the coin, on two extremes. One extreme is even more technology, even more remote, even more digital. And on the other hand, there's a need to be even more personal, even more human touch. And if we can get those two aspects out of the crisis, actually, I think it was a very good experience with really lasting effects.
It's really interesting that you mentioned this, Christian, because I know we're going to touch on both of these subjects later on, people and technology. And I know it's something that you're very passionate about, in essentially helping people to fulfill their potential and working closely with individuals and teams in order to do that. And you've mentioned there that the whole COVID situation has forced people to look at their relationships, how they can build these remotely, and offer flexibility to allow people to fulfill their potential. Really, I mean, do you feel that these are some of the key characteristics that you've had through your career, or built up through your career, that allow you to perform so well as Group CFO?
I think, I think everybody has different paths. And I believe probably also what I have seen with peers in finance, we tend to come from the sort of hard side of the business, the numbers, obviously, and then you evolve from the numbers to the structures, and then from the structures to understanding the dynamics. And there's always that aspect of a more fact-driven approach to things. And I think you maybe come at it differently just from a sort of personal preponderance of what you are good at and what you engage in than maybe different people who start in HR, let's say, who just start always with the people. And however, as you mature, hopefully, I don't know if everybody does that, but I think in order to be successful, you must realize that, the human is at the center of everything. And in order to have good business results, you need to have a good organization. And I remember, like, early in my career, I had a boss who said a very bland statement, which was, his mantra was take care of the people and they take care of the business. And I sort of thought, yeah, that's another slogan. But, with hindsight and experience and having seen a lot of different businesses in a lot of different stages, it's just absolutely true. And it's fascinating to see, especially when you look at organizations that had been neglected, when you inject a human touch and a recognition of the importance of people, and you treat them like grown-ups and you give them responsibility, the results follow, and they actually follow sometimes faster than you expected. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. No, and it's interesting. I mean, I like that that quote that you gave there, take care of people and they take care of the business. I mean, a lot of people who are senior in companies feel that their external customers are often their most important contacts. But I think when you hear interviews from business leaders who've been there and built up these huge organizations, the thing that they emphasize is actually aligned with the quote you made, that actually if you look after the people that are internal and make sure they enjoy the role, they're in the right positions, they're fully motivated, then everything else largely can then take care of itself when your external customer is then happy as a result.
Yeah, I think it's just important. Those people, they need to understand who their real boss is. And the real boss is the consumer or the customer. So they are there to deliver a mission that is ultimately to, create a customer willing to pay for something. And as long as that's clear and it doesn't become a sort of a, internally focused exercise, I think then you're set up for success. I think these two things, consumer is boss and take care of people and they take care of the business.
No, and obviously these are things that I guess you learn over time. I know you've had a very established career, more than 20 years. It's Procter and Gamble as a great foundation to the business, worked in a whole range of different countries and company sizes, and obviously now in the Group CFO role at the Klosterfrau Group. And I thought it'd be good to ask you, I mean, what does it actually feel like to be in this position now, in this Group CFO role? Because you mentioned earlier about learning the numbers, the dynamics, learning about organization, about the importance of people. It's a huge learning curve that people go on through their career. But do you feel almost like you've made it now? And so I just wondered what it felt like to be in your current role.
I think when you think you made it, you're already lost, right? You always, and that for me, by the way, is a motivation to work. One of the key motivations, sort of the intrinsic motivations for me, is to keep learning and keep improving. And there is you always learn. Increasingly later in your career, you learn through experiences. And to some extent, that learning curve flattens. But when you look back, you realize that you have probably learned more in depth. That means, you see more longer term trends, how certain actions impact organizations, how certain actions, strategic decisions play out, what was right, what was wrong. So I think the lever gets bigger. The frequency of learnings probably goes down. It's important you keep learning and realize that you need to learn. Yeah. Here in Klosterfrau, it's a fascinating business. This is a company that traces its roots back to 1826, and it's a real household name in Germany, probably Austria, Switzerland to a bit of a lesser degree, and has strong presence in other European countries. And it's a very diverse group. It really is a group of companies with, in Switzerland, we even have a sweetener business. So we have it, it's global, but it's very famous in Switzerland. It has a huge market share, Assu Green. And that ranges to contract manufacturing, in pharma in Germany, to our established OTC business, to a very exciting new business that's really launching a drug, where we are launching out of an established legal entity and an established business in a new drug that we acquired. And so there's a bit of a startup experience there as well. So it's a very large, very diverse experience. And the great thing is, because it's so old and established, it does have a long-term view, and we really want to build something with lasting value. And it's very motivating. It's also motivating that you're doing something, generally speaking, or actually almost, I think, completely. Every project we have is doing something good for people. And that's something that's sort of a higher motive of motivation and a higher purpose. That feels good.
Hi everybody, it's Paul Thomas here. I hope that you're well and you're enjoying the podcast so far. Thank you once again for your continued support listening to the podcast. I just wanted to break into the recording to talk to you about a really exciting new partnership that EMEA Recruitment has along with Operation Smile. And as founder of EMEA Recruitment, it's an honour and a privilege to announce this partnership. Personally, I was born with a cleft lip and palate, so the mission of Operation Smile is something that I have a strong personal connection with. It's not an understatement to say that the dentists and surgeons that helped me were life changers. It's not only about the actual operations that take place, the support and care post and pre-operation are beyond value, and from personal experience I can only say that I'd not be the confident, happy person I am today without this support. I want to help children experience the support and care and skill that I experienced on my journey, and hope that we can do this along with Operation Smile. Every 3 minutes, a child is born with a cleft lip or cleft palate, and the mission of Operation Smile is to provide help and support to these children through providing 6,000 medical volunteers across 80 countries who are dedicated to help these children with facial conditions, most commonly cleft lip and cleft palate. More than 200,000 children are born with a cleft every year, and they are often unable to speak, eat, socialise or even smile. However, it can take as little as 45 minutes and cost just €180 or 182 francs for Operation Smile to provide a child with life-changing surgery. Now, in partnership with Operation Smile, EMEA Recruitment is raising valuable funds and aiming to create 100 new smiles to support the organisation to provide free surgeries for children and young adults all over the world. Please help us by donating through the link in the bio or get in touch to see how your company can help get involved too. For the moment, I'll leave you to carry on listening to the rest of the podcast, but if there's anything I can do in terms of answering any questions or finding out how you can help and support EMEA Recruitment and Operation Smile, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you once again and enjoy the rest of the podcast. No, it's really interesting to hear, and I think it feels like you really enjoy not just the current role, but the journey that you've taken really to get to this point. And I think it sounds like a large part of the enjoyment has come from the amount that you've learnt and developed over the time and where you're at now from all the learning and development you've had. I guess one of the things that people sometimes find challenging, I guess, is that they learn new things and new approaches on a regular basis, but it's actually how they then action them and bring them into their roles or their lives. So I was actually wondering, a good question for you might be around how you brought your learnings that you've had over the years, but put them actually into action. Are you somebody who's very good at time management and listing priorities and focus to make sure that you're focusing in the right area, or do you have certain other ways that keep you on track, aligned with the results you want to bring?
I don't think there is one answer to that. I mean, I can give you a few sort of hints of what I think might be helpful, because everybody needs to find their own way. I mean, I kept thinking, I keep a log of things I find useful, and it's grown into a library of articles, thoughts, tools that go into areas that help me to be more effective. This might be thoughts about organization development. This might be thoughts about how to be more effective, what drives individual productivity. So I have, developed some little tools there, and they are like some of them are very, very basic. I mean, one very helpful one I read sometime was, don't keep a to-do list. If you have something you can do immediately, do it immediately. If it is something you want to talk, discuss, or anything else, then put it on your calendar. Make a slot for it. And then it will be scheduled. And that actually is in itself an incredibly productivity driver I've experienced. Now, it means my calendar is full, so I need to be careful with how I manage that. But, you immediately have the people alerted who you want to talk to on certain topics. So you already have everything. And so you sort of project that you are integrated into how they plan, and therefore you help them also to be more productive. So if there's one sort of common thing where I would give people a tip or a hint is, do this actively. Try to actively improve how effective you are, because you can never manage time, because there is 24 hours a day. And what the only thing you can manage actually is your attention and your energy. And for that, you need tools and approaches that work with you personally. And there will be different approaches. What's important is that you have that mindset and you do it continuously with a mindset of continuous improvement.
Is this something that you also bring to your home life as well, or is this reserved more for the business?
Oh, that's a difficult question. It's more for a little bit private as well. I try to keep my fitness levels. I try to improve my fitness levels, and they sort of stay the same. So that's success, I guess, when you get older. And I've been planning to do a triathlon here for I think 5 years, and I still didn't manage to, but I still have the aspiration. So I have some private sort of personal aspirations, and I try to work towards them. I'm less disciplined and less strict and a bit less determined in accomplishing them. Unfortunately. Well, something has to give, right?
No, I think that's lots of us are in the same position. I think it feels almost impossible to cover everything off. But as you say, I mean, you mentioned it there. You can, as long as you're aware of what the key things are, and you cover off, let's say, the top 20% of things, then the other 80% look after themselves. So I suppose as long as you focus on the right things, the right people, the right actions, and then you manage to get the results that you want in the role and outside of work as well, which is interesting. And I know obviously we talked a bit at the start about people and building organizations, which is something that you've had a lot of experience in. And there's a few questions on that coming up that are, let's say, from a more positive angle. But there's a question that I like to ask because it usually brings around a range of different responses. And it was really what you feel is the true cost of the wrong hire, because it's a question I get asked a lot in the network, and there's so many different angles to it. So I like to ask people what their thoughts are, and if there's any insight they can shed to the network from their experiences.
For me, it's actually very easy. It is the opportunity cost is the biggest cost. It's not only the time invested in searching, selecting, interviewing, onboarding, and then offboarding. But the true cost is the opportunity cost. A good person, the results a good hire would have contributed. The time lost in getting these results. That's the big thing. So the cost of the wrong hire, I think, is much, much bigger than most people think.
No, I think it is. There's so many different areas to consider in it, because you mentioned there, it's the time, it's the effort. I think it's the morale as well of the manager and the team when things don't work out with the person, and it's the opportunity cost, as you've highlighted there, that is lost because of it. I mean, obviously, you can't always get it right, but I think it's one when it doesn't work out, it's what you learn from it, aligned with what we've been talking about here as well. And I suppose, obviously at the moment, the job market is quite fierce. There's probably more people on the market in Switzerland now than I've seen in the 15 years that we've been working in the country. And I wondered what, from your point of view, you felt the best way a candidate would stand out from competition at an interview, because there's so many different avenues now for people to explore. There's having YouTube videos attached to your CV. There's focusing on tangible achievements. There's having a really highly well presented marketing type CV. And I just didn't know if there's anything that really stands out to you that could help job seekers really stand out in an interview for you.
I think you mentioned the one, at least I personally think, is the most relevant, which is experiences, well-documented experiences that highlight, that make me understand the potential of a person. So I wouldn't be looking at, what I do not mean with that is something that shows that the person could do their job or has done the job that I would be trying to fill. Rather, that the person has leadership skills, has the analytical skills to accomplish something tangible. And That's the most important thing. So it's not the label, the title, especially junior people are very keen on getting the right title on their CV and things like that. What I am interested in is what have you done, in which context, what was the action, what was the result? And, then you can go deeper and, explore it and say, how difficult was that context really? What really was your action and what really was the result? And from that, I think you get a really good read of an individual's capabilities and potential.
Where do you stand on the video additions to this now? Because as I say, something we're seeing happen a bit at the moment is you'll have a CV, but then the candidate will do a 2 or 3 minute video as well to complement the CV. But I know there's a number of individuals who don't really like it. Some people really love it. So I just wonder where you stood on that side, really.
Yeah, no, I don't like it because for a very simple reason. I've really a lot of information to process, and I can read very fast, and I'm sure I can read faster than I can listen to and look at a video. So it's a very pragmatic answer.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, but it's interesting, as I say, I mean, it's not for everybody. I think we know plenty of people who have the same view as yourself as well. And I think but as I say, there's so many different options for job seekers now that it's, we want to, through this interview, they can hear how to present themselves, and it's good to get your thoughts on it, really.
Yeah, for me, it's substance. Try to make the substance stand out, make the substance tangible, explain it. Context, action, results. Context, action, results. 3 examples. How did you achieve something you're proud of? What was the most difficult situation you experienced? And I think, with those simple questions, you can get a lot.
And I have to say, this is something that we consistently see when people have, say, the first draft of their CV, when they've worked at companies like, Procter & Gamble or GE or Honeywell, their CVs are often aligned with that. It's very tangible, result focused, and they get the result needs to be there. And I think, it's born from the fact that I think these types of companies like the P&G and Honeywell, etc., they have excellent recruitment processes generally, and they're focused on hiring the best people. So I wondered, actually, a good question for you might be around the experience you've had, not just at P&G, but generally on recruiting people, and what you feel are the best steps that people should take when they are looking to have an efficient and effective recruitment process.
I think there is still a surprising amount of churn. And the approach of recruiting companies is sometimes, and not all, but sometimes a bit quantity over quality. And what I think is important to be, if you think back what I said in the beginning about you have to marry both the highly digitized virtual world with the very personal, individual human touch. I think the same is true here. I think you, as a recruiter, as a recruiting firm, it is important to build up relationships, both with candidates over careers, ideally, and with companies. And I think that's probably a really big ask, given the pressure from LinkedIn and other tools that are driving to a much more commoditized mass quantity approach. And I think the results that I have seen are better when you have people who know you in the sense of you, the company, know the context, know the culture, know the people, know who has been successful in that company. And then they can help you to find the best person for the role. I think it's a worthwhile investment to do. So it's a worthwhile investment for recruiting companies. And I do think it is a worthwhile investment for firms as well, for who do need the people.
No, I agree. I mean, I think, you mentioned LinkedIn there, and I think certainly it can serve a purpose if used in the right way. But at the same time, it is a source of a lot of frustration for job seekers and for companies looking to hire people. I mean, the average number of applications in the last 12 months in Switzerland for a LinkedIn role was 250, and obviously, job seekers get frustrated because they're not getting any response at all, or they get an automated rejection. The company often will not necessarily get the right person for the role because it's more about what you were saying earlier is about relationships, understanding who the culture of a business and the fits on that side. And I think it's almost going back to the old fashioned way of recruitment, really, and going back to the quality rather than the quantity side, as you mentioned there. And I think it is a challenge for a lot of people because the additional technology is out there and it's not going away. And I think it links quite nicely into my next question, really, because clearly the finance function, it's ever changing anyway, but I think it's going to have a big impact. Technology is going to have a big impact on the finance function in the future with BI and data. So, I mean, how do you feel the information that's going to come from BI and data will assist or change the finance function of the future?
Well, it's a huge, broad question. And it totally depends on the area. The one area where I do see the biggest impact is also the easiest, because it's productivity. And that's, for example, we have experienced after the introduction of and rollout of SAP, quite significant efficiencies in headcount in accounting. And, fortunately, we were able to manage that very socially responsible with retirements and so on. But it was a significant increase in productivity just from that. So, and I'm not talking here advanced use of technology, it's just doing the basics right. However, we also see that sets us up to experiment what we are right now doing with robotics, so that we can automate increasingly complex work steps and dramatically improve the productivity of the people we have in accounting, for example. So accounting is a clear area of where this is happening, as we speak. I think, and this is probably a broad statement that can be made, that will be applicable for many companies. Looking at BI and analytics, I think it is much more difficult in a way, because there it really needs to start with the strategy, the business strategy, and then you derive from that what you want to accomplish and how you can leverage technology. I mean, I give you a very simple example that we use. We have a big portfolio in what we call cough and cold. So, medicines, products you take when you have a flu or a cold. And so one of the things we look at as a leading indicator is Google search results. And that's quite amazing. It's actually a really good indicator. Or maybe it's not amazing, it's maybe obvious, but it is a simple way of using technology and as a business intelligence tool. There is, I'll give you another example, which is many years back, actually, something we did at P&G, where we were able to link really fast market data, market share, and price data. And on one of our biggest brands. And what this enabled us was to get within a month, and this is now really years ago, this is like a decade ago, we got market share readings and average price by SKU, channel, customer, for us and key competitors for 25 countries on a monthly basis. And we could see where are we off pricing strategy, on pricing strategy, what is competition doing. And we saw that in a monthly rhythm, which was incredibly quick at that point in time. And I think is still, even today, probably really good. And so that would be, for me, applied business intelligence, where it helped us. And this was owned by finance because we said, revenue, this is under the umbrella of revenue management. Pricing is a critically important driver of profit, but it must be seen in the context of market share. And therefore, we established this system, and it worked incredibly well. And we had one analyst and one sort of person in the back office to prepare the data. We had it on dashboards, and we reviewed it every month. These are just two examples, and I think what's important is you start always with the business strategy, articulate critical needs, because it has to be big. It has to be, I'm not a big fan of tracking travel and entertainment data in the last to the 5 points after the decimal, because the leverage is low. But look for big leverage items like net sales, like volume, because these are the biggest drivers of your P&L and of your business, and are intricately linked to the business health. And from there, you look at what are the best tools to influence that, and there take a broad approach, a broad lens to figure out what's the best idea.
It's really interesting, and I think you've highlighted the benefits that can come from BI and data when looking at the productivity of a product line or a service, for example. I wondered how you might think if it's related to the area that you're passionate about, people and developing people, because I suppose there's in the not too distant future, things around BI and data might be then used to appraise people and evaluate people in teams. I mean, do you have any concern that it could just move to the point where we're evaluating people almost as robots rather than actually as individuals and personalities?
Oh, I think it sounds scary.
Mm.
I think the underlying foundation of, I guess it comes back to a philosophical question, and I believe that people work most effectively in teams, because business is a team sport, and life is a team sport, and so the challenge is to organize ourselves in highly effective teams. And a company is ideally a highly effective team of teams, or a collection of teams. And so that's where I believe the team is bigger than the individual. And we complement each other, we motivate each other, we energize each other. And, part of that is also we give feedback to each other. So I do think if sort of feedback culture is important, but it is a different one. I think it shouldn't be a mechanical one. It should be one where we facilitate and encourage exchange between teammates. And I think that's the most effective way. And there are sometimes, a side sentence, an observation, an encouragement is like 100 times more effective than a 360 degree. That's maybe, doesn't matter if it's once a year or every 24 hours. So that's what I think about this.
No, I mean, and it feels like that's a very good answer to conclude the podcast, to be honest, Christian. We've almost done the full circle. We've ended where we started. We're talking about teams and people, and I know we started talking about people, relationships, and taking care of the teams. So it's really, it feels like we've covered all the angles and then ended up back on teams and people, which has been a constant theme throughout as well. So I think it's been excellent to speak to you today. I've certainly taken a lot from this, but I know that our network will do as well. So I really appreciate the time you spent with us today, Christian. Obviously, it's likely that some of our network will want to reach out to you once this is promoted. What's the best way they can connect with you, Christian?
I think over LinkedIn, just, shoot me a message. We would be happy to do that. Yeah.
Excellent. That sounds great. Well, I guess all that's left for me to say is a huge thanks again. Really appreciate your time, and take care and keep enjoying the team building and career progression.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Christian. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. If you'd like to reach out to Paul or myself, please feel free to send a connection through on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to listen to previous episodes of the podcast, you can find them all at our website, www.emearecruitment.eu.